Today, we are privileged to have an exemplary, dynamic, and captivating speaker, Dr. Mohan Kancharla, who will be addressing the gathering in alignment with the Chennai chapter's this year theme. We now request our chapter vice chairman, Mr. Vignesh Ramanan, to introduce Dr. Mohan Kancharla to the audience.
A very good morning, fellow Foundrymen. It gives me immense pleasure in introducing our motivational guest speaker for the day, Dr. Mohan Kancharla. Dr. Mohan Kancharla has a bachelor's degree in computer science and engineering from Andhra University, Visakhapatnam. Postgraduate diploma in management from the Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta. A learner for life. Received his doctors of business administration from Swiss School of Business and Management, Geneva, in 18 months at the age of 58. Dr. Mohan brings in over 3 decades of experience in information technology and consulting. A career TCS from the class of 88, spent about a decade in IT services, half a decade in sales and marketing in Europe, and close to 2 decades in consulting. Founding member of TCS Global Consulting Practice, he established and led IT strategy, IT governance, and business transformation practices as Global Head, Sales and Delivery Support. Director, Method Management in Business and Technology Services Group, and now Chief Design Officer in Strategic Capability Group of Enterprise Growth Business Unit. Dr. Mohan is a certified management consultant, author of 2 books on consulting a practitioner's perspective and design thinking in consulting, and an invited faculty on consulting design thinking, co-innovator of strategy validation framework, patent pending. Dr. Mohan is certified in innovation of products and services, MIT's approach to design thinking, certified corporate director, certified executive coach, competent Toastmaster, a TEDx speaker, business storyteller, and a creative generalist. Dr. Mohan was recognized by CEO Today as one of the top 100 global management consultants and awarded CEO Today's Management Consulting Award of the year 2018. Dr. Mohan lives in Chennai with his wife Mary Rajeshwari and daughters Kezia Harshita and Nikia Shushmita. With the interactions we've had with Dr. Mohan, we have seen that he is an extremely down-to-earth person, and whatever topics that are thrown onto him, he has wonderful interactions. And this trend of having a motivational speaker to start the day was started last year, and we have seen that it adds great value by setting the tone for the day. And we are sure this address from Dr. Mohan will add great value. The stage is yours, Dr. Mohan.
Thank you, Vignesh. Thanks for the very nice words, kind of a thing. It's a pleasure being with you all here today. Good morning once again. And what do you see? My daughter said it's a question mark doing yoga, and my wife said you forgot your glasses. And if I were to ask you the same question, probably you might say it's such a dumb question, it's just another hook in a foundry. The answer is not important. What's important is that it has ignited your mind and motivated you to think, and that is sufficient. So therefore the message from this graphic is that you should never leave any question unanswered. Leave no answer unquestioned, kind of thing. Right? You will always be suspect if you have all the answers. On the other hand, ask the right question and you will be respected. Hold on to that thought as your motivation to innovate. With that, let's now explore innovation in its classical and contemporary sense, what I would call as the product perspective. And then we will look at innovation and beyond using creative techniques like design thinking, the people perspective. And from there we will move on to the focus upon the planet, or the thinking humanity, the planet perspective. Right? Now, innovation innovation need not be an invention itself. It is a myth in many ways. Like innovation can be incremental too, right? On the other hand, what happens when you see innovation need not be disruptive? What's really happening here is that when there is a disruptive innovation, the new replaces the old. So therefore, there is an economic cost for the social change that happens. And because the new markets are getting created within the existing industries or within the existing boundaries itself. And that is happening because the focus is only on technology innovation. On the other hand, if you were to look at innovation that can also be a non-disruptive creation, here what would happen is that the innovation is happening without a social cost of displacement itself. Because what you're trying to do is that you are actually creating new things which are beyond or the existing boundaries itself kind of a thing. So that's the difference that starts to happen. So therefore, what I always say is that innovation is more like inspiration by observation itself. And whatever innovation comes, it should come with a human processes kind of a thing. So how do we go about humanizing these processes itself? What are the people skills that we need to learn to humanize these processes itself? So firstly, we should start to learn the art of associating itself. Associating is connecting multiple things from different areas of knowledge or different industries itself kind of a thing. The second factor that could be important is questioning, always challenging the status quo itself. Just always continue to status the status quo. And the third is on observing itself, to look at how things are working, what things do not work, and therefore what are the different possibilities that you can look at kind of thing. And while we do this, you should make sure that you're engaging multiple senses kind of thing. The fourth element would be networking, connecting with different people to get different and a diverse set of ideas. And lastly, it's about experimenting, trying new ideas, getting new data, and to look at your source of innovation itself. With these skills, we are now ready to explore design thinking and also exploit design thinking. Design thinking is essentially a mindset for innovation where innovation happens by the people, for the people, in a human-centered way. So with that introduction to innovation, we now move on to innovation and beyond. And let me start with this creative technology called design thinking, which I'm extremely passionate about. In simple terms, design thinking is all about thinking as a designer would kind of a thing. But what it also, the formal definition from Tim Brown goes on to read that it is a discipline in which there is there is a designer sensibility and methods to match the people's needs are brought together by what is technically feasible and also viable from a design standpoint or viable from a business standpoint. The extension of that design thinking is what we call as, also called as an innovation trifecta. Now, innovation trifecta, this is from Kotler's human to human marketing. And what it essentially talks about is that it extends the definition of user desirability, technical feasibility, and business viability to build innovative solutions for human problems itself kind of a thing. Now, how does one do that? Is that what design thinking offers here is that solutions that are not necessarily incremental, they are beyond incremental, but they are not disruptive itself kind of a thing. And the reason it happens is that because design thinking creates a framework where you start to think about not in terms of what I can do next, but more in terms of where do my users need the help most kind of a thing. So that's the framework, or that's a mindset it creates for us to innovate and to develop and to take it forward kind of a thing, right? To understand this further, let's look at a couple of the design thinking principles that are applied. Principles are nothing but the what of design thinking. I mean, essentially there are the ground rules or the frameworks or fundamental aspects which are true for any context itself. And there are about 5 design thinking principles. The first one is the human-centered design. It teaches us to empathize with the end users, your real end users for whom you're developing a particular product or a service itself kind of thing. The second principle is embracing ambiguity and diversity. Okay, first of all, we should accept that uncertainty is a reality. And we had people speaking in the inaugural session also that the amount of uncertainty that exists within the industry on a day-to-day basis itself. The third principle is that if you have to address that uncertainty, then one needs to be open to radical collaboration. How do we learn from different industries itself, kind of a thing? How do we get the best practices across industries itself? Like in your case, it could be from other competing industries, it could be from suppliers, it could be from your partners, and so on and so forth. Like with that, once you have that, how do you co-create innovative solutions, kind of a thing? Here it is all about promoting emotional engagement itself, kind of a thing. As more people come together to articulate these solutions, then the chances of that being successful is far greater, because everybody feels that they are part of the problem and therefore they are part of the solution, and they will ensure that the solution will work going forward, kind of it. And the last principle is that implement and iteratively improvise, kind of a thing. So what it means here is that you're continuously looking at it and you're proactively working on improving or resolving the perceived drawbacks, kind of a thing. So these are the 5 principles of design thinking, and tagged to these principles are the design thinking practices. Like how the principles were the what of design thinking, practices are how do you execute those things. Practices tell us how can a principle's objective be achieved, kind of a thing. So to look at a couple of practices here, one is the empathy maps. This is it's a simple 2x2 matrix which talks about what is your user saying, doing, thinking, and feeling. It plots all of this in a simple 2x2 grid, and it also captures the pains and gains of each of your end users, etc. The second practice is the user personas, where you characterize a particular segment, a user of your target audience itself, kind of thing. If I have this particular audience, what is his typical characteristics, what are his needs, what are his requirements, and so on and so forth. The third practice is how might we. This is a very simple practice. Essentially, it's all about crafting actionable statements by simply prefixing how might we. Whenever you have a problem, if you just were to say how might we solve the problem, and so that would trigger a lot more ideas going forward, kind of. The other principle would be what I call as the business model canvas. This is a one-page graphic which captures the entire ecosystem within the enterprise itself, kind of a thing. And we also have a practice which is called the value proposition canvas. It talks about how your products and your services would fit within your customer space, kind of a thing. Now, in addition to this, there are 7 or 8 other principles like journey maps, storyboarding, and so on and so forth, kind of a thing. But these are broadly the principles. So we now understood what design thinking is all about. We have an idea of the principles, the what of design thinking. We understand how to execute those principles or realize those principles through this set of practices. Let me now walk you through a couple of illustrations onto how design thinking got applied in various industries itself, kind of a thing. So if I look at the banking industry, we were working on an assignment where we had to create a savings account for the millennials, kind of a thing, the youngsters. This was done in early 2000 time frame. Now, conventional approach, what it would mean is that if I have a savings account, then you would have some credit limits, you would have a passbook, you would have a checkbook. So there are certain set of features that are there. And conventionally, what people do is that, okay, so if it's a children or a young adult, therefore the withdrawal limit should be under 1,000, or there should be some limit, they don't get a checkbook, and it should always be through a withdrawal slip, and so on and so forth. Essentially, you are tailoring the existing specifications and scaling it down. But what design thinking advocates to you is that, and now we start to apply some of the principles and the practices itself, kind of a thing. So we start to say by that you apply the human-centered design. You reach out to your end customer. So while we were working on this consulting assignment, for about a couple of weeks, we were nowhere to be seen within the bank, and our client was wondering where our consultants have gone. We were out in the field, in colleges, in cafes, in gymnasiums, and in playgrounds, talking to youngsters and understanding what is it that they would like to see in their own bank account. Now, this is a point of a time they said, okay, we would like to see internet banking. It's not so much, I mean, it's a pre-mobile banking era, and you want to see internet banking kind of a thing. We want to make sure that there is a seamless transaction from one platform to another platform kind of a thing. Now, these are the things that starts to happen because you are applying the principle of design thinking on human-centered design. You are reaching out to your real customer. You are not scaling down on a specifications, but you are reaching out to your real end customer and finding out what is it that they would actually require. Like the second illustration would be from the insurance industry. Now, when you look at the premiums for auto industries, like, so conventionally what happens is that the premium is always based upon the cost of a car. So if I have a Maruti car, I pay 1,000 rupees premium. If I have a BMW, I pay 1 lakh premium. Like, so it's always depending upon the asset of the car kind of a thing. What the insurance industry did in this case is that they looked at the principle of openness to radical collaboration, and they went about to learn lessons from the other industry. They're actually a tangential industry. So this is the time that the mobile industry was growing up, and there's this concept of pay-as-you-go came up kind of a thing. So they said, okay, can we apply that into our own auto premium calculations for the car insurance, for example. What we are trying to see here is that they're leveraging the cost industry practices, and what they came up with is that what if I make the premium based not upon the cost of the car, but based upon the usage of the car. And the reasoning is that, so why do you pay a premium? You pay a premium because if the car breaks down, so, or if there is an accident or there is a breakdown, then I need the insurance company to cover for that breakdown and so on and so forth kind of a thing. Now, and when does a breakdown happen or when does an accident happen? It doesn't happen within your house, it doesn't happen within your garage. These accidents or the premium claims happen only when the cars are on the road itself. So therefore, now if you look at the usage patterns, so I might use my compact car for my daily office commute. I might reserve my SUV for my weekend travel to go to ECR award with my family or friends kind of a thing. What is happening, the usage of a small car is on the road 5 days a week, I mean clocking about 5,000 or 500 or 1,000 kilometers, and whereas the premium car is used only on the weekends and it probably clocks only about 100 or 200 kilometers. So what you're trying to say is that what if I change the policy from the cost of a car to based upon the usage of the car kind of a thing. And this is learned by adopting openness to radical collaboration. They learned it from an industry which is not even in their field kind of a thing. If I now move on to the travel industry or the airline industries, for example, now in the conventional airline industry, what happens is that if you were to provide value-added services kind of a thing, what airlines were always looking at it, they looked at within their own domain. I can create an economy class or an economy plus, or I can create a business class. They looked at the airport itself. They provided for lounge access and so on and so forth, a quick check-in and so on and so forth. But if you remain within that, it is not sufficient. And because of that, they later, Go IFB and the Make My Trips and the niche players came up and took over, because here we are applying the principle of embracing ambiguity and diversity. You are now looking at the larger ecosystem. So I work for TCS, our headquarters is in Bombay, and I travel to Bombay probably once a month or once a quarter. And whenever I go there, our head office is in the Nariman Point Air India building. When I used to travel there, probably we would stay at a Taj hotel close by. Now, if this information is available to you, then can I provide additional services kind of thing? So if what you're trying to do here is that you're extending your value proposition into the ecosystem to say that my travel pattern is that I travel out on a Monday morning, I return on a Thursday, I travel from Bombay airport to the Nariman Point area, I stay in a Taj close by. Now, as these informations are available, you are now looking at the wider perspective and you're integrating services together so that you can give an enhanced customer experience to your end user kind of a thing. My last example, and this is probably one of the best illustrations of design thinking. There is a video available. Please do look up that video, and it's an amazing story kind of a thing. So this is about design thinking in healthcare. The challenge was that the design, this is from GE Healthcare, and Doug Dietz was the product engineer who designed the MRI scanner for the children itself, kind of a thing. So how do you create a scanner experience for children and that they would love and to go forward, kind of a thing? Now, what I mean, typically, I'm not sure how many of you have actually gone through the MRI experience, but it is extremely daunting, kind of a thing. It is claustrophobic. It's very noisy and it's very difficult, even for adults itself, kind of thing. And imagine the same thing for a child, right? Now the parents' anxiety also increases. The parents tell the children, 2 or 3 days before, they explain the whole process, and then they say, okay, this is what you're going to do, and so on and so forth. Like, they found the parental anxiety is very high, kind of thing. They bring the child very nervously, they go through that. More than the child, the parents are even more anxious, kind of a thing. And when Doug Dietz went to see this experience, it was his first product, which was launched at I think it was in Pittsburgh or a Philadelphia healthcare pediatric hospital. And he was shocked, he said, I thought I created a great product, but here I am seeing that my end users' experiences of shock and awe, kind of thing. So and around the same time, he discovered about the Stanford D School and the design thinking as a concept. He went about and it actually revolutionized the way he started to work. So what he did is that he started to reach out to the end users itself, okay. So he went and met tons of pediatric doctors. He went to the children's museum to understand the museum caretakers as to how to interact with the children. He went to the play schools. He went to the libraries. He actually met children. He met parents of young children, and then they came up with this new design. And what he went about is then he implemented that. What he did is all these learnings. What he did is that he transformed that whole MRI experience into an adventure itself, So the moment, typically if you enter into the MRI thing because of radiation and everything, so there is a long corridor, and then then there's a room, and then that's where the actual machine is kept, kind of a thing. So as you enter itself, so different hospitals had different adventures. One had a sea adventure, underwater adventure. One had a pirate adventure, kind of a thing. So the children are given, or a jungle adventure. The children are given like a Tarzan or something. They get a mask, they get a trumpet, or different things together, kind of a thing. And the caretakers or the attendants are also dressed up, and they go through playing through the whole scenario through the corridor. And when they enter the room, that's when they tell them that, okay, now this is where the pirates are coming, or the police is coming, or there's a shark coming, kind of a thing. Now we need to lie down absolutely still and not to make any noise at all, kind of a thing. And he said, okay, there's your hiding place, and they've actually put them onto that MRI machine. And now I'm going to do it even better. So I will switch the machine, and so that you will not even be seen at all, kind of a thing. And the children go through that experience. They don't even know when the scan happens. And because of all the music and everything that's played, all the clanking also is lost out, or it'll be like a whole jungle drum beat that is there, and the child doesn't know about it, kind of a thing. And when the child comes out, and the best compliment that Doug, he said he got is that when the young child tells her parents that, Dad, can we come back again, right? That, in my opinion, is probably the greatest of applications of design thinking. And see what has happened here. All the principles have been put into action. Okay, so you went and reached out to your end user. It is not about reducing the sound or creating a sound buffers or trying to do that or painting something like that. That will not solve the problem. Who is the end user? I want to make sure that what are their requirements that are there, kind of a thing. How do I reach out to them? How do I look at, get different information through radical collaboration? I talk to teachers, I talk to doctors, I talk to museum people that are there, I talk to art school teachers, therapists, and so on and so forth, kind of a thing. So there are many more such examples where the power of design thinking and the power of interacting with your end user comes into play, and you all put it together. So design thinking, yes, it has found application in several industries, and it has found application in education. It has found application also in governance and government and so on and so forth, kind of a thing. Now, how design thinking typically works is that while there are several frameworks that are there for design thinking, this got popularized a lot more in the late 90s because through the Stanford D School, or the School of Design. It got christened as a D School by David Kelly. And later they founded a design firm called IDEO. They are the pioneers, and they've really worked a lot in kind of bringing it into the business and how we understand design thinking today, kind of thing. And one of their frameworks is what they call, this is their framework, And everything that came beyond after this, or there are several frameworks that exist, but all of them pretty much work upon the same principles itself. It talks about empathizing, understanding who your users are and what are their requirements, kind of a thing. It talks about define is the second phase, where you're able to synthesize all your insights from the empathy phase and trying to derive at meaningful requirements for yourself. Once you have a certain set of requirements, then you start to ideate on solutions and go about seeing how many unique ideas can you generate. An important aspect of design thinking is that no idea is a bad idea. You will never shoot down any idea. You accept an idea, if it's not good, you park it, you may come back to it, you may not come back to it, kind of a thing. And that's how it fosters and brings an amount of collaboration, kind of a thing. Once you have the ideas, you go into prototype, where you start to create some models so that your end users can get a look and feel of how things will happen. And the last step is implement, where your end product is available and you take it to the actual market, kind of a thing. What you also notice in this graphic is that there are several lines that are going back from every phase, kind of a thing. What design thinking advocates is that it has to be feedback at every stage, kind of a thing, irrespective of whatever stage you are in. If you find a problem and if you think that there is an alternative idea, it needs to be improvised, you come back to the drawing board and do it all over again, kind of a thing. That's a core principle of design thinking. We created prototypes and we thought that it didn't work, and we came back to the drawing board, start to ideate on new principles. Or there are times when you felt that maybe we did not talk to some more users or the real end users, kind of a thing. So are there certain users that we have missed out? So then I need to go back and talk to them. So that is how you start to iterate and build everything together, kind of a thing. So with that, around the innovation and the design thinking and innovation and beyond, as we call it, let me now take you forward into what I started to use the term as thinking humanity, kind of a thing. And to understand this better, just to quickly recap to you for the industrial revolution that we went through. So we had the industry 1.0 in the late 17th century, where it was all about mechanization. From mechanization, we moved to, in a century later, we moved to electrification that started to happen. In industry 3.0, you saw the automation that starts to take place. Industry 4.0, which is about 3 or 4 years prior, we started to see the digitalization. What we are experiencing today is actually Industry 5.0. And Industry 5.0 is just as an extension of Industry 4.0. It's not a new revolution per se, it is all about personalization. Right? And that is what we start to see. And this started to take into effect only in the 2020 onwards, where you started to see Industry 5.0 that started to happen, kind of a thing. Okay, and 5.0 relies on 3 core principles. One is you want it to be human-centric. You want to promote talent, diversity, inclusiveness, and also to empowerment, kind of a thing. The second dimension is on sustainability itself, kind of a thing. How do you respect you take care of your planetary responsibilities? The third element is resilience itself, and are you being agile and adaptive to new technologies, kind of a thing. So when I spoke about design thinking, now design thinking with all its credentials, to a large extent, it is still an Industry 4.0 play, kind of a thing. It is more at a human-centered design. However, design thinkers also have now started to accept this reality, and then now they are now moving from a human-centered design to what they're now starting to rephrase that as humanity-centered design, kind of a thing. So whatever products that you create, earlier it was a pure product or an R&D perspective. Now they said, okay, we brought in the people perspective, and in humanity-centered design, you want to make sure that it also supports your planet itself, kind of a thing. And that is how all the thinking humanity comes into effect. And in this relation, now you also have the ESG, which has started to come into play. Our chief guest today spoke about ESG. And when it came to play, it was all about the 2030 agenda for sustainable development, which was signed by all the United Member States in 2015. It's all about how do we protect and preserve our planet now and also in the future, kind of a thing. And at the core of it lies 17 sustainable goals, kind of a thing. So these are goals for all the countries, both developed countries and developing countries, that they need to adopt to in a global partnership, right? So that is And amongst all of these goals, I've taken one goal, which is, if we look at SDG 9, for example, I mean, the goal itself is all about industry, innovation, and infrastructure. And coincidentally, this is one of the two goals which has an impact on all the three factors, on environment, social, and governance itself, kind of a thing. So it talks about, and the goal would read, how do you build a resilient infrastructure that promotes inclusive and sustainable industrialization and also fosters innovation, kind of a thing. Now let's take this preamble and go back to our design thinking framework and our principles and our practices and see how we can apply design thinking into an ESG context itself. So this is the goal that we're starting with, industry, infrastructure, and innovation. The first phase is about empathy. And here the requirement is all about how do you assess your needs itself, kind of a thing. So SDG goal actually has a target. The target reads that, one of the targets is at 9.3. It talks about how do you provide the infrastructure to SMEs, especially in the developing countries, and make sure that you have financial assistance available to them and the line of credit and so on and so forth. So that's how the goal reads. And under each goal, UN has defined a series of indicators that are there. And one indicator that we will take for our illustration is that the amount of increase in the line of credit for your SMEs, kind of a thing. So now if I look at the goal and the target and the indicators, under the empathy phase, by applying the human-centered design, I use a technique of empathy maps. I look at my stakeholders, my end users. My end users for this goal would be the financial service providers, and I try to plot an empathy map for them, like what do they see when they think about giving a loan to a SME company in a developed country, or what are their thinkings, what are they feeling, etc. I do the same empathy map for the SME owners itself, kind of a thing. Pretty much like the Foundry owners, where there are family-owned businesses and it's a family-run owners that take into place. So that is what we do within the empathy phase. From the empathy phase, when you go to the define phase, here it is about baselining what exists, kind of a thing. So in the current SME sector, what are the financial services that are available, and what is the line of credit, and what are the mechanisms that are available, kind of a thing. So to do that, I apply the principles of embracing ambiguity and diversity, and I try to build user personas. My characters in this target segment are all the SME owners, kind of a thing. So for them, what are their characteristics, what are their requirements, that is how I start to build the user personas. From the personas, then I start to ideate. The next phase is about ideating, and here you start to think about, if you have to increase the line of credit to your SME owners, kind of a thing, what are the different type of interventions that are required? So that is what you start to ideate, and here you start to be open to radical collaboration, kind of a thing. Maybe a practice like how might we could be very good practice to use here. So how might we increase the line of credit? Okay, for example, can we replicate, can we create a microfinancing system like the Gramina Bank, which got created in Bangladesh, for example, kind of a thing. So you start to explore a different set of ideas that are there, kind of a thing. And that's the ideate phase. And in the prototype, in the prototype phase, you start to build models itself, kind of a thing, and start to see. So here you're talking about, you start to evaluate each outcome. Every idea that you get, now I'm trying to co-create innovative, impactful solutions, and I use business model canvas. For every idea, I start to evaluate what are the outcomes. I need to test that outcome on a business model canvas. A business model canvas typically has, it's a 9 building blocks that are there. It talks about the customers, it talks about the costs, the profits, key resources, and there are different such elements. But it gives you in one page, it gives you the complete perspective of how the outcome would work in your environment or in the ecosystem itself, kind of thing, right? And the last phase is when you start to implement that, and you start to create the impactful solutions, and you iteratively start to improvise it. And here you apply the practice of value proposition canvas, where you can see what is the value that it is provided for your end customers itself, kind of thing. What is extremely important here in this and in the previous phase is that These are social changes that you're trying to bring in. And when you are bringing in social changes, you need to measure your intended outcome. It's a cost-benefit analysis that typically is there. The second thing is that you should also measure the unintended outcome. So it's not just about, okay, giving a line of credit, extending the line of credit, I've made this process simpler and so many people are using it kind of a thing. But there could be an unintended outcome which talks about, is it being misused kind of a thing, is the funds are being diverted for some other thing, so on and so forth. So that measuring that unintended outcomes is equally important kind of a thing. So this is how an illustration of how we can apply design thinking even in an ESG kind of a context and even in your own environment of industry, infrastructure and innovation kind of a thing. And this is one such goal, and like I said, all the other goals can also be addressed through the design thinking principles, specifically quality education or clean water. These goals are are classic cases for leveraging design thinking. So that kind of concludes the illustration that I wanted to speak about, and to summarize my thoughts, I'll just say that innovation, when we think about innovation, you should think about beyond product innovation and look at it from a people perspective. And while doing so, we have to make sure that the planet is also being protected kind of a thing. So if I were on your National Foundry Day, if I were to paraphrase innovation to suit it to your world, I would probably say that innovation is it's melting of minds, cast with your collective wisdom and finished to perfection. Probably you should make that planet perfection. Right? Thank you so much for your time, and I am now open for questions.
Any questions, gentlemen, for our guest speaker?
Thank you, sir, for your inspiring talk in alignment to this year's theme. Your insights have given us a fresh perspective and a lot to think about how we can implement the design thinking approach into our Foundry business to be successful.
Right. Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here, and wishing my fellow speaker the best wishes, and hope you all have a wonderful day of discussions. Feel free to reach me out, and I'll be more than happy to be in touch and provide guidance. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We now request our Chennai chapter chairman, Mr. V.K. Raman, to felicitate Dr. Mohan Kancharla with the traditional Angavastram. We invite Mr. Sundaresan, Senior Vice President, Operations and Technical, Brakes India, to present a memento to our esteemed speaker.